Hi guys, Assalamu alaikum. This is Arif. In this video, we are going to see how we can read the input from the console window and show the output onto the console window. First in a C++ program and then in a C# program. And in order to do that, we are going to read the input of the integers and also in the form of the strings. So this is a C++ program first, and this is the input we are going to read. So first we are going to give the number of lines we are going to read, like 3 for example, and then we are going to read out those lines. Like this is the string and this is the int. So these 3 lines we are going to read. So this is the main program of our C++ program, and here we have defined integer n, and this n we are going to use to give the number of input lines in the input. And here we have used this n using this cin and this operator. So we are going to read out using this whatever we are going to put in the console window in the first line, and this is the variable n, and after that we can, using this cout onto the console window, we can show that n, and after that using this for loop we are going to read out 3 lines or the n number of lines, and after that we have defined a string name first, and we are going to first give the name its value, which is going to be a string, using this cin and this operator to read from the console window. And after that we have defined a int id, and name and id we are going to read from each line. So we are going to again use this cin and this operator, and we are going to store the value inside our id variable, and after that finally we are going to print out both name and id onto the console window. So this is the simple program, complete program. Now let's build and run this program so that you guys can understand what really we want to do. So here I am going to first give the input, which is going to be the number of lines which we are going to read, and we can see this on the output as well once I pressed it. Now I am going to give our input first name and then id. So we can see it is reading it and showing onto the console window. Second, again some name, and then some id. Now we can see that onto the console window as well, and finally some other name and some other id. So string and int we are going to read, and now we can see that as well once we enter it. And finally we are going to try to give it some other value and see it is going to read. So name and id we have given, but it is not going to read because it is going to only read these number of lines after we are going to give this number. So this is one way to read the values from the console window and show those as output. Now there is another way in C++. Instead of using this cin and this operator, so first I have defined a string line. After that I am going to use now this getline function, and we are going to use cin inside this getline, and this line variable, which is a string, which is going to read out each line like this. And after that, inside this n, using this string to int, since first number is going to be just one number on the whole line, so we can just convert our string into an int and store those into this n. Finally, we can display the n as well. Same way for the next lines, using this for loop. What we can do is we can skip out this line first of all. This is now we are not going to use. We are going to try another way. So string, this is going to be our command line, which is going to give us our name and the ID. So again, we can use this getline function instead of this cin name, and now we are going to use cin inside this getline, and using this string we are going to store each line using this command line variable, and later we are going to use this string stream. We are going to say this is our variable, and the function is going to be taking the argument from this. So this string stream is going to break up this string, and that broken up string we are going to put inside this. And after that, we have defined a name variable, and we are going to put the first value before the space, before the next space inside this, which is going to be our string, right? Same way, second value, we are going to again use this string stream, and we are going to store that using this into this ID. And this line we can skip because we are no longer going to use this thing. We are going to try this second variation, the way we can read, and finally we can show those onto the console window, the values. Let's build and run this program. So now again I can input 3 lines. So number of command lines is going to be 3, and let's input our name and then the ID, and we can see again onto the console window the output. Then again some name string plus ID, we can see onto the console window, and finally another name and another ID we can see onto the console window, and again we can try some name, some random name and ID, and it is not going to read it because we have given here the number of lines equal to 3. So these are the two ways with which we can read the input from the console window and show that onto the console window as well. Now I am going to show you same thing in a C# program. So this is a C# program. Again, the same input. This is going to be our input, and we are going to use this C# program. This is using system. This is using system collection, and after that, in this main program, we have defined integer n, which is going to store this value. After, we are going to read that from the console window, and here we are going to define a string line, which is going to read out the first line using this readline function from the console window. And after that, since this is going to be our string, we are going to convert that into a int using this line, you see. So inside this parse function, which we are calling on this int keyword, so we are going to convert this string into a int and store it inside this n variable. And after that, we can display that onto the console window using this Console.ReadLine function. Again, we are going to run this for loop, and now we are going to give our 3 command lines, which is going to be our name and ID. And here we have defined a string command line, and using this Console.ReadLine, we are going to read out each line and store that line inside this command line variable. And after that, we are going to break up this command line string using this split function, and this split function is going to split it whenever it is going to see a space. So this is a single space, and like for example, after the name, we are going to put a space, and then we are going to read out the ID. So it is going to split name and ID and place those inside this string array, this one variable. So this is just key value. Key can be the name, and then the value can be the ID. And after that, this is going to be our string name, and inside this name, we are going to put the first value inside our this kv array, which is going to be our name, which we are going to read from the console window. And then we are going to define another variable id int, and we are going to use this same parse function, and this is going to be the second value inside our kv array. So second value is going to be int, and since our second value is string previously, so we are going to change this int. So for the string, we are going to keep the same because name is a string, but for the id, we are going to convert our id from the string to a int and store that inside this id. And after that, using this Console.ReadLine function, we are going to display the name and id onto the console window. So this is going to be our complete program. So let's build and run this program. So give this number of lines 3 we are going to give, and we can see the output onto the console window as well. And after that, I am going to give the name and the ID. The first line, it is going to read and display. The second line, name and ID, read and display. It is doing that. Third line, any random id, we can see that. And fourth line we can try as well, just to check. So since number of lines it is going to read is going to be 3 to this n, so the program is exiting once we are trying to give it a fourth line as our input. So this is one way using this line function. So there is another way as well with which we can convert our string line to integer using this function and this function. So line we are going to put inside these two functions and convert that into an int. And display onto the console window. Same way here also we can convert our this string into a int using the same function and display onto the console window, right? So this is just another way of reading and converting our integer. So let's build and run this program. Try the same inputs, number of lines first of all, then our name and id, first line, name and id, second line, and name and id, third line, and then try another random name and id. So it is going to exit. Now we can try to convert our integer using this method as well and display onto the console window. So skip out this line for example, and now try this. This is just another way to convert our this string into our integer and display onto the console window like this as well. So we have skipped these lines. Same way, if we are going to come here, so skip out these two lines and include this line. So name is going to stay same because it is a string, and to convert our int we are going to use this try parse function like this to convert this string into a int. Same way we can include these lines. So this is if block which we are going to use this try parse function like this. Right now our program is complete. So this is our number of lines. We can see try first line and id, second line and id, third line and id, and again some random line, fourth line, and so this is our complete program. So these are just some ways with which we can read the input of type strings and integers from the console window and show those onto our output console window. So thank you guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Have fun.